Hi everyone, I'm teacher Mohammed. Today you will understand, today I will teach you how sexual production occurring in flowering plants, sexual reproduction, how sex occurs in flowering plants. Firstly, we should know what is reproduction. Before I will teach you how sexual reproduction occurring in flowering plants, firstly we should know what is reproduction. So far the reproduction is concerned, it is the process by which living organism produce offspring of their own kind. यह गई सह process यथ मज जानदार पानस जनरेशन पौध करान पानस जनरेशन तैयार करान रिप्रोडक्शन गई सह process यथ न्यू ones produce गसान young ones produce गसान you can say new ones produce गसान we call it as a reproduction. Now the question is why reproduction? Why reproduction? It is the only process by which the continuity of the species remains. You get why it's a process. Yatmos generation, species continue to generation thawa. Native starts aye, the mayat gay khatmi. But by this reproduction, you should also continue. Species pan generation rosa continue. There are mainly two types of reproduction. One you call as asexual reproduction, another you call as sexual reproduction. Asexual, A means without sex. The reproduction which not involve sex. The reproduction which does not involve two parents. The reproduction which does not involve the combination of the two sex, that is called as asexual reproduction. Reproduction without sex. Producing young ones without sex. Here only one parent is involved. From one parent, new ones is produced. New ones are produced. Young ones are produced. Only from the one parent, new one is produced. Young ones are produced. We call it as a asexual reproduction. Mainly takes place in unicellular organism, and it also takes place in plants and trees besides sexual reproduction. So for the sexual reproduction is concerned, sexual reproduction, the reproduction which involve two sex, fusion of two sex, which involve fusion of two sex, which involve mating of two parents, which involve male and female sex, that is called as sexual reproduction. In this reproduction, two sexes are involved, two parents are involved. And from two parents, male sex and female sex, when they combine together, that process is called as fusion. Then zygote is formed, then embryo is formed, then one young one is produced, baby is produced. It is by sexual reproduction. So far, sexual reproduction in flowering plants are concerned, the in this module you will learn how sexual reproduction occurring in flowering plants. Flower is the beauty structure of the plant. It gives beauty to the plant. Besides beauty, flower is the main reproductive part of the plant. Flower is the reproductive part of the plant. If we see flower, the covering of green leaves beneath the flower, that are called as sepals. Combinedly, they are called as claques. The colored leaves, different colored leaves, these are called as petals. And now there are the sexual part of the plant flower, we called as the male sexual part of the flower is called as stamen, and female sexual part of the flower is called as corpel. Stamen has two parts. The upper part is called as anther. The thread-like structure is called as filament. This upper part we call as anther. The thread-like structure we call as filament. In the anther, there are pollen grains, there are male sex cells, and the female part we call it as a corpel, and corpel has also three parts. The upper part is called as stigma. The uh, below the upper part, the stigma, the neck shaped part is called as style, and below the style there is a flask shaped structure. We call it as a ovary. In the ovary there are ovules, and the ovule there is a female sex. We call it as a egg. Now flowers are of two types: bisexual flowers, unisexual flowers. You can say bisexual plants, unisexual plants. Bisexual flower go yat means male gamete tita female gamete. The flower which contains both male and female gamete, we call it as a bisexual flower. Bisexual flower pea plant, ya China rose, these are called as bisexual flower, or you can say bisexual plant. Yat means male reproductive part te ase, female reproductive part te ase. Yat means stamen te ase, to corpel te ase. Yat put tu pea plant chusha ya China rose chusha. Now another part you call as, in the center there is another part we call as a corpel. And there are some flowers which contains only one part, either male reproductive part or female reproductive part. We call it as a unisexual flower. We call it as a unisexual flower. Bisexual flower go yat male part te ase to female part te ase. Bisexual plant go yat male, you can say bisexual flower. Yat male yani stamen te ase to corpel te ase. Unisexual go yat either stamen ase or corpel ase. We call it as a unisexual. Now, how this process occurs? This process occurs by agencies. The male sex cells which are in the anthers, due to by wind, due to by water, due to by air, due to by insects, due to by birds, due to by animals, these pollen grains are transferred from the male part to the female part. From this male part to the female part of the stigma. To the female part of the stigma. That process is called as pollination. If the pollen grains falls on the same flower, on the same female part, that pollination is called as self-pollination. If the pollen grains of one flower falls on the stigma or the female part of another flower or another plant of the same species, that pollination is called as cross pollination. Self pollination go yele hase yum and pollen grains em kise female participate pen. Earth posh kise female participate pen. We call it as a self pollination. Agar yum pollen grains worth pay em kise kulkis biggest female em kise kulkis biggest posh kis female participate. या यमay pollen grains पे इमिस species किस बेकिस कुलिस pet, बेकिस कुलकिस poshus pet, female participate. We call it as a cross pollination. Yum pollen grains is per pevanch. When these pollen grains fall on the female part of the flower, on the stigma part, firstly falls on the stigma part. From the stigma part, pollen grain form a tube-like structure, passes through the style, and then reaches ovary, and then at last meets with the female egg cell. Then their combination occurs, male and female sex cells. Then formation of zygote occurs. Now that process is called as fertilization. When male gamete and female gamete, when male sex and female sex combine together, that process is called as fertilization. After the fertilization, zygote is formed. Zygote divides several times, form an embryo inside ovule. The ovule then develops a tough cut. The ovule then develops tough, hard, coat-like structure, which we changes, which then changes into seed. The ovule then develops a hard coat structure around it, and it develops into a seed. The ovary, on the other hand, ripens and forms fruit around the seed and forms a seed. And after you see, there is formation of fruit. The ovary, on the other hand, ripens and forming fruit around the seed. And after this, certain pods of flowers falls. यानी weak sepals, petals fall, and then fruit is developed. The seed which is present inside the fruit is the new baby plant, which we can sow in another soil. They develops into a new baby plants, and so this process is completed. Now look, students, at the board. Now in a nutshell, my dear students, today you learn how sexual reproduction takes place in plants. Sexual reproduction in flowering plants. As you know, the flower is the beauty part of the plant, or you can say the flower gives the beauty to the plant. Besides it gives beauty, the flower is the reproductive part of the plant. You see the green leaves beneath around the flower, we call it as a sepals. The colored leaves are called as petals, and this is called as male reproductive part. Male reproductive part, these are called as male reproductive part. Male reproductive part, male reproductive organ in the flower is called as stamen, and these had two parts. This part is called as anther. The upper part is called as anther. The thread-like structure is called as filament. And the female part of the flower is called as carpel. Female is called as carpel. Female part of the flower is called as carpel. Carpel has three parts. The upper part, which is a nutrish part, the upper part is called as stigma. The neck part is called as style. The flask shaped part is called as ovary. Now, my dear students, how this process occurs? As we know, there are two types of flowers. One you call as unisexual flower, another you call as bisexual flower. Bisexual flowers get 10 flowers, यमन मज मेल पॉट तो फीमेल पॉट यमन मज स्टेमन तो कार्पल पोश यस मज दुशे पॉट स्टेमन कार्पल वी कॉल इट इज ए बाइसेक्चुअल तम पोश यमन मज मेल पॉट अकिस पोशस मज फीमेल पॉट बेकिस पोशस मज वी कॉल इट इज ए यूनिसेक्चुअल फ्लावर युस मे तुम एग्जांपल दिस. There are two types of flowers. One we call as bisexual flowers, another we call as unisexual flowers. Bisexual flowers get them, male reproductive part the female reproductive part. Unisexual flowers get them, male reproductive as X flowers from female reproductive as because flowers from. Now, how this process occurs? The anther and the filament, these are two parts of the male reproductive part, we call it as stamen. The anther possess male reproductive sex, or you can say male grains. We call it as pollen grains. These are the male sex cells. Thrown by wind, thrown by water, thrown by air, thrown by animals, these pollen grains reach to the female pod, to the stigma of the female pod. Stigma is a nutrition where they take the nutritious and they form a pollen. These pollen grains form a tube-like structure. We call it as a pollen tube. In the pollen tube, there are male sex cells. They reach the ovary. In the ovary, there is ovule, and in the ovule, there is egg. This pollen sex cell and female egg cell combine together. This process is called as fertilization. मगर पोलिनेशन यह दो किस्म गई सेल्फ पोलिनेशन बे क्रॉस पोलिनेशन. सेल्फ पोलिनेशन गई इस पर पोलिन ग्रेन्स यानी मेल रिप्रोडक्टिव सेल्स इम पेन इम किस से फीमेल पॉट्स पे अथ किस पोश किस फीमेल पॉट्स पे वी कॉल इट एज सेल्फ पोलिनेशन. अगर पोलिन ग्रेन्स यानी मेल सेक्स सेल पे इम किस से कुल किस दुइमस पोश किस फीमेल पॉट्स पे we call it as a cross pollination. या अम किस किस्म किस दोमिस कुल किस पोशस पे पे यम कुलिक मेल यह तक क्रॉस पोलिनेशन वन यम कुलिक मेल सेक्स सेल्स पे यम किस कुल किस पोश किस फीमेल सेक्स सेल्स पे अत क्रॉस अत क्रॉस पोलिनेशन. अम पे जाइगोट ग process fertilization, male sex female sex combine fertilization पे बना जाइगोट जाइगोट पे डेवलप ग एम्ब्रायो युस तमे वोन पे एम्ब्रायो युस ओव्यूल ओव्यूल डेवलप ओव्यूल संदित डेवलप ग हार्ड कोर स्ट्रक्चर टफ हार्ड कोर स्ट्रक्चर तो सह चेंज इनटू सीड. ओवरी युस राइपन ग पपा पे डेवलप ग फ्रूट्स मज तो यम सेपल्स तो पेटल्स पत्थर पे तो यह प्रोसेस कंप्लीट गसान. पे सीड यह हेन पे बेकिस जाए तथ तो तम सको न्यू प्लांट्स डेवलप कर. ओके माय डियर स्टूडेंट, थैंक यू वेरी मच. होप यू अंडरस्टैंड, होप यू बेटर अंडरस्टैंड.